and welcome to this meeting of the Scottish Affairs Committee. We're going to be looking at industrial transition in Scotland and in particular at former industrial towns. So I'd like to very much welcome the panel that we have, the first panel we have this morning, and I'll ask each of you just to introduce yourselves briefly, please. Start with Mr. Craik.
Councillor Altany, Craik, Fife Council and Scottish Chair of the Industrial Communities Alliance.
Pauline, Grandison, Head of Operations with the Coalfields Regeneration Trust.
Good morning everyone, Councillor Debbi, McCall, Midlothian Council, Member of the Industrial Communities Alliance.
Thank you. Before we ask the questions, I have a declaration of interest to take from Elaine Stewart.
Yeah, just to refer to my register of interest and avoidance of any doubt, I was a former employee of CRT.
And a transparency statement from Kirsty Sullivan.
Yes, just for the purposes of transparency, I was a signatory to the Edinburgh and South East Scotland City Region Deal in my former capacity as Deputy Leader of West Lothian Council.
Thank you both. Okay, so first question I have for you this morning is asking each of you briefly, please, if you, and I realise that's a big ask, if you could describe the problems that former industrial communities face in creating more local employment. Maybe start with Councillor Craik.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I think the problems have been well rehearsed over lots and lots of occurrences, but we'll touch the main ones. The poorer health and poorer health outcomes and life expectancy, worklessness in the working age population, poorer skills, and generally a need for them to move from their communities to cities, to jobs elsewhere, rather than jobs being where they live. So I think those are the main, you did say brief, so I'll stick with those being the main ones.
No, that's helpful, thank you. Ms Grandison.
From the Coalfields perspective, it's the rural situation of the towns and villages. The transport links aren't great, high cost of public transport as well for people getting from the rural villages to the towns where the main jobs are. And as Altany says, the health, we're working with people that are, on disability benefits and things, and it's really difficult for them to be able to then get into the job market.
Councillor McCall.
Thank you, Convener. Yeah, I absolutely agree with what my colleagues have said. There's also a lack of opportunities within the Coalfields areas. So if you look at the number of privately run businesses, they are lagging way behind. And again, there's many reasons for that, whether they feel that the skills are not there for the people that they want to employ. Connectivity has already been mentioned. There's all those interconnecting issues that really have that impact.
Thank you. I'm going to pass over to Elaine Stewart for the next question.
This is Pauline. So given the coalfields are still suffering from deindustrialisation, what part can communities play in creating local jobs?
The communities themselves really have to play a very important part because obviously larger industries aren't going to come back to these rural areas. So we've got to ensure that we can work and support these communities, especially in the areas of East Ayrshire where, as I said, the transport links to get to the major towns, but we need to be supporting for social enterprise, for organisations like we have over in East Ayrshire, like the Zone and Yip World, who are creating training, they're developing the young people, they're creating job opportunities within these organisations. And we need to look at how they can diversify and go into tourism and those types of areas as well. So the young people coming through education need to be skilled and need to really have the time spent to encourage them to move into jobs, but to be creating the jobs within their own towns and villages.
And just an add-on to that, Pauline, what could be done to ensure that the new jobs are high-quality jobs?
I think it does come down to the skills development of the young people and what we can bring into them. I mean, one of the things that CRT are looking at, and we have got a very established model in England, is to create small to medium industrial units. So that is bringing them into areas that normal developers wouldn't want to build because it wouldn't be worth their while. So we can invest into those. We're bringing jobs which would be the higher skilled, so smaller engineering companies coming in and using the space, and also with, as I say, because it's in areas that wouldn't be touched, you're creating work for the people that are building them. You're then using the model of the community wealth building, where the money's actually staying within the areas that these are being created in. So we feel that this is a very important step for us as an organisation to be moving into and to get the support to be able to do that.
I think it'd be interesting perhaps to hear from the other two witnesses if they've anything to add to that point about the high quality jobs.
Yeah, I mean, I think you've kind of hit the nail on the head. We don't just want any old jobs. We want good, high-paying, quality jobs, and to get those, we need the skills out there as well. So, I think for me, Pauline really hit the nail on the head when she said, what's available. Because where are we going to put these jobs? Where are they going to be? Where are they going to actually? In Midlothian, for example, a lot of people move to jobs, well-paying jobs in Edinburgh. We know that. I mean, that's probably the same for your surrounding areas as well. But to have, say, I'm from Pennycook, so say we had some really good quality, well-paying jobs in Pennycook, that's great. But people in Gorebridge, which is one of the poorer parts of our county, if they don't have transport, you can't physically you can't get a bus from Gorebridge to Pennycook. You have to then go either into Edinburgh up to Dalkeith and back out again. So it's just, it's a nonsense. It's making sure that those jobs are in those particular areas, rather than, this is quite a good place to go. It's got good transport links to Edinburgh. We'll go here. They need to be situated where those higher levels of deprivation are, and we know where they are. That's well evidenced.
Thank you. I suppose the key to this is skills, but it's not just training people for the sake of it. It's about making sure that the skills are relevant to the workplace that they're going to be meeting when they're finished training. And unfortunately, a lot of our pipeline of skills, or people are leaving school with the wrong skills or the wrong desire, want to be YouTubers or what have you, the world of work doesn't seem attractive to them. So from our point of view, in terms of communities, place-based investment, so that there's, I've got a number of ICA things with me today, more jobs, better jobs, closer to home, kind of hits it on the head. You don't have to travel very far if we get this right and we get jobs nearer where people live, and if we make our communities again rather than dormitories. And I think that makes the connection between the skill, the job and the economy locally that supports the whole community. Deindustrialisation has meant that the big industries are gone, absolutely, Pauline, they're not coming back in that form. But the green retrofit, or whether it's working in solar arrays, or whether it's working in wind turbines, all of these will need skills, and they'll need to be accessible. And I think the approach the CRT takes with smaller industrial units, the same one that we've taken in the City Region deal across Fife and the Lothians, is to make units that are available for businesses as they are now. Good quality, high quality units that we can allow businesses to start from and to grow from, so that there is a bit of joined up there, but the skills at the very heart of it. And if I take a bit of Fife, when we had a couple of major employers close, we did a Mid-Fife Economic Action Plan, and we found that Cowdenbeath, right in the heart of the Fife coalfield, had a massive skills deficit, huge. The gap, they were so far behind, it was quite difficult to understand why that was the case. And it was about access to further education. It was about making sure that they got something out of school and they got the right qualifications. So skills are at the heart of it all, or as other people would say, education is, but we need to get people ready for work.
Thank you, Chair. So I think this has been touched upon, but what do you see as the barriers that are holding back private enterprises from moving into former industrial areas?
Do you want me?
It's for all of you.
Sorry, I'll go on a bit. I would imagine that's what happens. In terms, I suppose, we've looked over the last number of years at things like subsidy control and how we've dealt with regional investment. As a state aid, as it was called in the olden days, we didn't make best use of that as a country. And we need to have patient capital to help us unlock brownfield sites that are just sat there that the commercial sector will not be able to make anything from, but we need to make use of our Scottish Futures Trust and all these, the investment, the Scottish National Investment Bank and others, to invest over the long term, so that we're not under the financial pressure first off, so we can get the right thing in the right place. But it comes back to probably where I started, place-based investment. We should be making places, not where do we think we want people to amalgamate to go to work. We should be thinking this as an integrated part of that. Right.
Does anyone else have anything to add to that?
I don't think so. I mean, I think I think I said the stats are quite glaring there. That there is this reluctance to invest, or is it reluctance? It would appear that private enterprises aren't going in and investing in these areas. So what can we do then to encourage them? And I think Altany's kind of summed it up for me.
Okay, and is there something to do with engagement with private businesses at a very local level, where people know the area best, they know the skills best, they know the local resources best?
I think that, sorry, Pauline, do you want to? I'll go. I think you're right in terms of the local knowledge will certainly help make sure we're not trying to put a white elephant in the wrong place. We've had that in the past with Hyundai and various others. I'm just thinking of Fife for myself. But I suppose the other thing to think about is the use of what we used to use in regional development was an assisted area map. We used to have areas that we knew needed investment and specific help, giving them enterprise and giving them support. We seem to have moved very much away from that. So the local dimension, the community dimension could be helped with a updated and better data set used for assisted areas. Now that we're out of the EU, it's slightly different, but we can still use some of the same thinking about how do we direct rather than allow the market to choose where it wants to invest. I think we need to support it to the right places.
I suppose that has to be two-way though. So if you're looking for the government or local government or Scottish government to do something, there has to be that movement from the business community as well, and how they engage. Do you have any thoughts on how we get movement on that side to get them to recognise that a particular area that is in need of better jobs and industry is the right place, and that it's to their benefit that they locate there and invest in local communities?
I think there was I think there was an attempt to understand that sort of enterprise thought with the Greenport idea, and well, I wouldn't want to be critical of how that's, and I should state that I'm on the board of Fife's Fourth Green Freeport. In terms of the idea is right to incentivise work, to give tax breaks, to give opportunities and patient capital, give them time to do these things. I think we used to have that anyway. I don't think we needed a Freeport to do that. We could have done it if we'd made better use of assisted area map and used incentivisation, tax breaks, particularly employment tax breaks are always good. But to use brownfield sites, for example, requires a little bit of cleverness, I think, or fleet of footness in the planning system to make sure that that's happening and easy. Businesses want certainty, and they wanted to know that it's not going to change, particularly if they're going somewhere they've not been before. They want a long-term period where they can do what they do, and it's a partnership. You're right, though. We need to have all the bits moving in the right direction.
Okay, and can I ask what you think the main challenges are to building a more diverse economy? And I think it was perhaps Pauline did you mention that earlier about a diversified economy?
Yeah, looking at the communities working and establishing services themselves within their own communities, and looking at social enterprise. I think in Scotland we do have quite a number of social enterprises, but I think within the deprived areas that we work in, the organisations are delivering services, but they don't actually recognise that that's what they actually are. But they're getting on with the work and they're doing it. And I think there needs to be a bit more support for these organisations that are creating local jobs in their own communities and that are helping the young people with their skills development. And and it's tackling that the furthest from the job market. I mean, I think we can talk about the more higher skilled jobs, but these young people that are that want to go into these jobs, obviously they do well at school, they go to university, but within our areas we've not got that aspiration because they're just not getting supported to have those aspirations within our communities, and therefore that's why we need our smaller organisations like the Yip World and Cumnock and the Zone in Dalmellington to be able to give these young people the aspiration of getting better jobs and getting more well-paid jobs and giving them the confidence to be able to go out into the big wide world rather than being insular within their own community. But I think talking about how do we get businesses to come into our communities, I mean we've got within Fife, we've got Amazon who it's one of the biggest Amazon depots that there is in Britain. And we've got Sky as well, who's a big employer and has been for years. They're paying off 300 people, in a small, in the area of Dunfermline. So that's going to have an effect. And they're moving to the work to South Africa. So, you're talking how can we encourage businesses to come in when the businesses that are already there are paying off. The banks, we've got an industrial site that has the major banks, and they're all paying off people, not just the high street ones, but the big call centres and things. So, it is very difficult.
An opportunity for more locally homegrown businesses that could maybe bring more stability to the local economy.
Yeah, and that's why we want to use this property model. Altany spoke about Cowdenbeath. That's one of the areas that we're actually going to be building small to medium industrial units. So that's bringing that skill base into an area that's badly needing it. So that's how we really have to prioritise those types of projects.
Thank you.
Susan, you have a supplementary, Susan Murray?
So yes, talking about attracting private business in, do you not think that comes back to what you said before about skills?
Yes, absolutely. And I think that the problem as well that we have is we're up against AI. We don't really know what impact that's going to have, other than, take somewhere like Amazon. I don't want to pick on Amazon, but we know that the jobs that they have at the moment, are they going to be around in 2 years? We don't actually even know that, if we're going to have these AI pickers and so on. So while you might think, oh, well, this will be great, we'll open a big warehouse with 1,500 jobs. I mean, are they good jobs? Are they going to be there in a year's time? I'm saying 2 years' time. We just don't know. And for me, it's more even on a sort of micro base. We've had a little bit of success in Pennycook, and the problem we've got in the high street is our shops are all really big, and so therefore no one's going to come in and take over like a big massive shop front. So what's happened there, and it's been private business has gone in and divided it into little micro shops. So they've got, I think it's 10 micro businesses in there instead of one. And that's been really successful, and they have then moved on into a slightly bigger shop in the high street, and there is that little bit of growth. But that's 10 individual micro businesses that weren't there 4 years ago. And we all know the struggles in the high street, and it's a hard job, it's a hard sell to get people.
Can I just ask, is that the result of the Pennycook bid?
Yes, that was part of that. Yeah, and again, going back to something that Pauline said, which I think is really important, is the partnership working. So there's the Business Improvement District, the Community Council, the Community Development Trust. There's been so many small organisations within that have all fed in and used that encouragement. So BIDS has now branched out. That's now finished, and one of the shop owners is now forging ahead with Pennycook Means Business. So I'd like to throw a wee cheeky invite to you all. You're all very welcome to come and see me in Pennycook, buy you a coffee, buy you a bit of cake in the local store. Really, really nice.
In a previous life, I spoke to Pennycook Bid, but I also visited Yip World in Cumnock, and I think that these are small things that I'm getting the impression that you're all talking about young people. Have you written off the older people market, the people in the older, that segment of the population?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And again, what I've been talking about has been older people that have been doing this. I think, I speak for myself, but I feel that the older people maybe have that. They have maybe a bit more, I don't want to say drive, but there's maybe a recognition of, I can do this. Whereas I think our younger people need far more encouragement to move on. And I think, and you'll be sick hearing COVID, but I don't think we can underplay the impact that COVID had on our young people. And again, I'm hearing, from employers that young people who are school leavers, they just don't know how to behave in a workplace. You've heard all this as well, but no, absolutely not writing off older people. I think certainly I feel, and Pauline can speak for herself, when we speak about young people, it's because we feel that they need that wee bit more encouragement, support, direction, and so on. Okay.
Sorry, can I just touch on the point about skills and CPD and lifelong learning? That is very much at the heart of what we need to be doing. Our workforce demographic, particularly across the former Coalfields, but across Scotland in general, when we're talking about Scotland and the city region deals, is that we need thousands of workers for the houses we're going to build, for the green retrofit, for the green freeport in terms of wind turbines and solar arrays. We need thousands of workers for those. Not only do we need thousands of workers for those, but we need to run the economy at the same time as we provide thousands of workers for those. So we can't possibly fill that from the young cohort. It needs to be about retraining, reallocating and reorganising the workforce that you have. And some of that will be part-time because they can't, the people that are on out of work benefits because of illness and infirmity or whatever, or mental health, they may not be able to work full-time. So we need to be cleverer about effectively the human resource that's available to deliver the economy, because when we start looking at the higher paid skilled jobs, the higher skilled jobs, who's going to run the rest of your economy? Who's going to run your tourism? Who's going to run your hospitality businesses? Who's going to run your shops? Because if the wages don't keep, we're going to have gaps all over. As a local authority, finding planners and public health people, they're just not there. You have to grow your own. So we're all chasing after the same diminishing group of people to fill these jobs, and we'll need to be clever about how we do it, and people need to retrain. As an adult returner a number of times to universities and colleges, when I grow up I'll decide what I want to be, I think is what will happen. But people need to retrain. Education's a lifelong thing.
Other supplementary from Elaine Stewart?
So I think what I'm kind of hearing is that the place-based method is a successful model for regeneration. Would you agree that would be the case? Yeah.
Partly. I think it makes better places, absolutely, but because of the nature of the way the funding comes for place-based, and I say this often, I refuse nothing but blows when it comes to money for Fife as the finance spokesperson. However, what happens is it often comes with strictures, it often comes with short time scales, so you have to have things ready to deliver, and most of the time local authorities are not in a position to do that. So you say, you've got an allocation of £3 million or whatever, and needs to be spent by March, and you're getting in September. Capital doesn't work like that, and government needs to just take a hard look at itself and say, we need to be a bit cleverer. It's one-off money by all means, but you need to let us do it. So it was a local government plug, not an ICA one. Apologies. Too many hats.
I'm going to pass now to Harriet Cross.
Thank you very much. Good morning, all. We spoke there about sort of skills and skills gaps and sort of how different generations can get in, but I'm looking now at sort of locationally, so rural communities. We know, for example, if you're in the Lothians, you're close to Edinburgh, for example, you've got that advantage. Noting, Councillor McCall, what you were saying about, for example, bus and local transport, but sort of more rural areas who are similarly left behind, similarly impacted by deindustrialisation. What can be done to ensure that they can benefit from sort of moving in new economies, growing economies as well? I take this very seriously, given I represent Gordon and Buchan, which is a North East constituency, very rural, will be impacted by the decline of the oil and gas sector. So it's something that we're dealing with now, and I'd be very interested in your take of what can be done to make sure that areas like mine will actually be able to sort of grow different economies, particularly the more rural ones.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have to learn from the mistakes of the past. And I think we can all see the evidence is still there 40 years after the Coalfields closed, the devastation and the impact that had, and we cannot have that going forward for the workers in the oil fields. We just can't go through that again. And we know that we have to reskill people up. We know that, and I think therefore it has to be done. It has to be place-based. The community has to buy into it. Yes, transport, in particular in your constituency, the connectivity links are going to be problematic. They are, and that's something that needs to be invested in. Forgive me, because I don't know your area particularly well, but do you have a city deal? Is it an Aberdeenshire city deal?
Yeah, of sorts. But I think sort of just more generally across the country, clearly there's, even if we look in sort of remote highland areas, like there's some areas where, regardless of which their sort of named big city is, the connectivity between the two is effectively non-existent. Even just in terms of commuter times, it's not possible. So I think it's more of a general question of how do we make sure that regardless of where people live, regardless of where their communities are, they are able to move into new economies, new industries, new opportunities, despite what's happened in the past with industrial decline.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think city region deals do have a part to play in that as well, because again, Altany and I can talk about Edinburgh. So we've got Edinburgh, the Lothians, Fife and the Scottish borders, which is a significant chunk of the country. It's 26% of Scotland is significant and very diverse, from the Scottish borders, which again, very, very rural, up through the more prosperous Lothians, and with caveats there, obviously, and over into Fife, and we know the areas that are problematic. So for me, that the investment, if it's done, again, I'm going to go back to partnership working. When you have a city deal and you've got the people who know their area best and know where needs the help, and where are we going to put these various different things, and it's a planned package, with say, I know again our city deal, it's you've got the 5 strands that we're looking into and where everything's going. So for me, city deal would be the way forward. That would be, in my opinion, with the buy-in from the local community. Probably Altany will come in there.
Yeah, thanks, Debbie. You've covered a number of the main points. I suppose the next one is to accept that the world of work has changed. Yeah. We all quite like the idea of hybrid working. I think you've got Stephen McCabe on hybrid later. So the notion of going to work has kind of been a little bit decoupled from some of the skilled jobs and some of the more modern digital technology jobs that exist. You don't need to go to a place necessarily to do it. So in terms of supporting the rurality of Banff and Buchan and Fife has all of these things, because we're effectively Scotland in miniature. But essentially, if the Project Gigabit or R100 is actually reaching where it's meant to reach, and giving people access to the whole digital infrastructure that's supposed to support the economy, that will enable people to make maybe different life and work choices, maybe not having to go into Aberdeen every day. Driving around Anderson Drive wouldn't be very much fun, I would imagine, but essentially it's about what do the new jobs look like. And for high skill engineering type jobs, they aren't all about going and putting pieces of metal together anymore. A lot of it is done on computers. So that digital mobility will work if we get the digital infrastructure in place. We say we've spent a lot of money on our 100 Project Gigabit and digital superfast broadband for Scotland. All of these are the right thing to do, but I'm not sure what the penetration is into Banff-and-Buchan to support that kind of
I think
change.
it's the same as anywhere. Like sort of the first 80% is the easiest, isn't it? But then therefore you still always have the same 20% or whatever it is, always being the ones who are left behind. And I guess that's just where, and understandably, because it is the most difficult, but that's not understandable for the people living there on the ground. But I think your point about internet and broadband, and actually therefore, as we've said, across the board, working together, all these things coming together, it's not one industry or one sector who's going to be able to sort this.
I suppose the other thing I would like to add is, while city-region deals are vogue just now, but really they're effectively regional economic partnerships, so are not a new thing. We've done these for years. The key thing to understand is that towns are not necessarily feeders for cities.
Yeah.
They've got their own ecosystem, they've got their own requirement for a place and a community and jobs locally, so it's about making sure it fits the right thing and thinking of different towns and different places. In the coalfields particularly, we don't want them all picking up in the morning, getting on the bus, getting in the car, getting on the train, going somewhere else, working and coming back. That's not making a place. And I think the APPG group for Coalfields did a number of publications that sort of touched on that very thing. We're not all talking about we want dormitories to feed jobs. That is not what quality of life is about. That's not work-life balance. That's not the kind of jobs of the future that we'd like. So anyway.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And that's just for what Altany is saying, that's why CRT, we want to be working with partners but also get investment. We've got an ask into MHCLG at the moment, working with the Minister Alec Norris to get a large investment of £50 million over the next 5 years to be able to build these small to medium industrial units, and that is going to be in the hearts of these communities, making sure that the jobs are there, making sure that we can upskill people and have local jobs for local people. So the investment into these communities is crucial. And touching on Debbi saying the coalfields is 40 years ago. With I work at the coalface. I'm out there every day with these communities, and the thing that they say is that they feel the forgotten communities. We never want any other deindustrialisation Asian communities to feel like that again. Yeah. We have to make sure that does not happen.
Thank you. Thanks.
Commentary from Kirsty Sullivan.
Yeah, just very quickly, I'm just picking up on a couple of points that you made, Altany. Would it be your view that the rollout of digital connectivity could be a key enabler and facilitator to attract more businesses into rural areas? Because as you say, you don't want a rural area to become a commuter area, purely taking people out of the area into cities where they're going to spend money and maybe return home and they don't have the amenities back in their home villages.
I think that's yes is the short answer. I suppose digital infrastructure and making sure that every community is connected properly to access, whether it's accessing government services online, whether it's accessing things like Netflix or community things that people want. If you can't get a decent connection, you're not getting it. So I have a slight wry smile about this, because I remember when digital superfast broadband came out and they were talking about, we'll get broadband, they were talking about 24 megabit per second, and I'm thinking I'm never going anywhere near that. I have cable and it was like 500. I thought that's going to be rubbish, but actually that was a step forward, and then R100 came along to try and pick up the rest, and then of course Project Gigabit. But the private sector is running ahead with the fibre to the premise, because they know that there's money to be had in that, and it's working. But it still comes back to how do we get to the hard to reach parts that are not commercially great, and that's about how we do our regional procurement. We have to say to these firms, absolutely, you can come and do towns like Glenrothes or Livingston or the ones that are easy to do, but we also need you to do some of the stuff that's a bit harder to connect to, and we need to get the pricing of that right. We just have to accept that it's I suppose it must have been like the telephone rollout in the first place. Is that, you know, we had party lines and you couldn't get a phone number and you couldn't get it installed. We have to get the digital infrastructure in place so that people can access all the services and all the jobs that and all the opportunity and learning even that may come from that. The Open University make huge use of online.
Okay. Following on from that, to have the infrastructure, the digital infrastructure, you also have to make sure that the people have the resources themselves to be able to access that. Yeah. I mean, you know, we're working with an organisation, Digital Poverty Alliance, to be able, within East Ayrshire, to be able to have families access laptops, because all they have is their phone. How can you do a Open University on a phone? You know, how can you do any type of training that could be done on a laptop? You need the resources. So it's all good and well with that, but the resources have got to be put in place as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. In former mining communities in Yorkshire, I understand there's been quite a significant increase in warehousing jobs that are close to matching local employment levels before the miners' strike. Now, I understand the growth in Scotland has been more modest. I know obviously that Yorkshire is a more central location and proximity to transport infrastructure that would be particularly difficult to match, perhaps. But maybe in the first instance, I'll direct this question at Ms Grandison. You know, what advantages do you think that the Scottish coalfields might particularly have that they can capitalise on?
I mean, I think with the warehousing sector in Yorkshire, it was a bit of a, you know, it's better to have jobs than not to have jobs. So it's like build big, you'll fill it with, you know, all these employees. But I think it really is more a concern than saying, you know, well, does Scotland really want all of these warehouses? Obviously, the transport links just aren't there to be able to capitalise on that. But you're also looking at, you know, these jobs are, you know, the low skills, they're low wages. So I think we want to aspire to something better in Scotland. We do, as touched earlier, we've got an Amazon and it is just off, you know, a main motorway connection to north, south, east and west, being situated in Fife. But it's where those other areas are that we could, you know, build these big warehouses. I mean, we've got, I think, the green energy, that's playing a very important part. You know, Scotland has got very large wind farms, but again, the skills, the people that are working on those are university graduates to come in and do, you know, a lot of that type of work. But they're jobs that are there and then they're gone. You know, once they're built, it is only the maintenance. So, you know, you can have the developers there with, I mean, we actually had a young chap in East Ayrshire that we managed to get a job with the wind farm company. But once it's built, and then the jobs are no longer there. It's creating money for the economy while they're there for, you know, a few years. But once they're gone, they're gone. And I think it's making sure that we have that our communities have the capacity to be able to capture the community benefits that come from these industries that are coming in with the greener energy. So looking at the skills for green energy jobs, but also looking at how our communities can ensure that they're getting that community benefit to then look at being able to set up social enterprises to be able to do, you know, to deliver services within their own communities.
Yeah, if you don't mind, in terms of the warehousing jobs, absolutely, the growth of that in Yorkshire has been a benefit for obviously a lot of jobs in that. I suppose I would caveat that by saying that a monoculture is not a good thing for jobs. Why are we talking about deindustrialisation? Because an industry went. We're talking about coal went, steel has gone. These are, if you take away a big, if you focus too closely on one thing, you will pay at some point later when it changes. So I suppose we need to learn from that and create a more ecosystem-led, I've used ecosystem already, but a more joined up, multifaceted part of what does the world of work look like? What jobs do we need to support? And how do we do it? Although, and we did touch on AI earlier, I was checking back my scribblings. AI comes with a set of challenges and a set of opportunities, perhaps. But when they actually make AI footprints, there's not a lot of jobs, and lots of football pitches covered in computers and warehouses, but there are not a lot of jobs in that. So what we're saying is that the height of our aspiration for low-paid, low-skilled job? I don't think it should be. Although it does form part of the recovery is to have any job first, and we can move on from that. But yeah, I think the warehousing boom in Yorkshire is locational. It's got a big market to serve, and I can understand why it's happened. But I don't think you'd want to be too reliant on just one thing. Scotland, by its geography, most of us live in the middle bit. We'll need to have many more options, and it'll be more skills-based and more diverse, I would hope.
Yeah, I would be interested to see how many of these jobs are still around in 5 years' time.
Yeah. You've made that point about AI. How do, just forgive my ignorance, how do the paying conditions of the warehousing jobs compare with the old coal mining?
I think that's an interesting question. I think there is I'm trying to see which document it was. I think the levelling up the former coalfields has got a lot more interesting in it, as well as a couple of other pieces that were done by Sheffield Hallam about whose recovery and where has the growth gone, that kind of thing. And I think the point is that warehousing jobs, they're clean, they're warm generally, they're not the same as going down a hole in the ground and manually hacking out coal from the coal seam. They're very different animals, and that's not what we're looking for. What we're really saying is, what do we want our communities to be like? Are these jobs unionised? Probably not. Have they got good terms and conditions? Certainly better than some. But they're not an equal comparator. If we're talking about engineering jobs, you would find that warehousing jobs would not be attractive if they had the choice of engineering jobs and the skills to deliver them. But it's a fair point. They're different. But I think that's not the height of our aspirations for our communities. But to do that, they have to help themselves, and they have to get the skills to meet the job market that exists.
I've actually got a stat. So the wages in the coalfield communities are 6 to 7% lower than the GB average.
Yeah.
Thank you.
There's a number of stats in these. I couldn't find them, so thanks, Pauline.
Elaine Stewart.
For everybody, so we spoke about health stats earlier on, and what would you say are the underlying causes of the jump in high capacity benefit claims within our coalfield areas, and how could we maybe address that?
Go. I'm not sure you can say it's just a jump in out-of-work benefits and health-related benefits in the coalfield areas. It's happened across the country. The number's was below 2 million for most of the time. It's now nearer 2.8. COVID has had a huge impact on that, and people have become less able to work. They've been debilitated on a number of fronts. Sometimes they just can't go back to the job they were in. So there is a bit of that. In terms of, I suppose, I don't want to be glib, and it's not an attempt to be so, but poverty tells you everything you need to know. People have poorer health outcomes, they have poorer outcomes at the end. They don't, their life expectancy is lower, but their good health expectancy is much lower. Diet is poorer, the impact of eating ultra-processed food and all sorts of things. These are just symptomatic of no job, not having jobs, and having communities that are left behind. And to use shorthand, I don't like using shorthand, but essentially, if you've not got opportunity and you don't have people in better jobs, you can't come forward from that. They're going to have poorer outcomes, and you'll have more people unable to work, or whether it's mental health, or whether it's COVID, or whether it's long-term vascular issues or respiratory. It was even harder before when they were going, obviously, down the mine. That had a huge impact on people's health, and they gave up a lot to provide our industry.
And maybe how do you foresee the government's welfare reforms impacting on employment in the industrial communities?
Sorry, yeah. I mean, I think we've been here before. I think we're all old enough to remember all the different incarnations of incapacity benefit over the years, and I think again we know what doesn't work. We know that the stick doesn't work. We need to have some carrot to go along with it, and just changing the questions or the levels of attainment on a PIP application form isn't going to change someone's ability to take on and work either a full-time job when they're not able, when it might be part-time that they're able to. I think we need to be looking at what can we do to help people back into work, rather than, well, actually we think that I used to work in welfare rights, and I've seen it when people got 0 points after being on incapacity for 15 years. Right, you have to be at the job centre for an interview on Monday morning. But how's that going to work? You just can't expect someone to take that leap from having been on incapacity for decades to then start work on Monday morning. It's not going to happen. And I don't think you're going to get the employer. Employers aren't going to want to take someone on like that as well. So I think looking at what's happened at the past, I think there needs to be some recognition of that.
Chair, on that point then, so do you think that the UK government's announcement in relation to the right to try is a welcome initiative?
Yeah, I mean, again, these sorts of things have, again, it's not new. I didn't remember that from previous incarnations. So I think that is that's to be welcomed.
Can I just add, obviously we're here as the ICA and we have different hats being in local government too, as a local government organisation. In terms of PIP and the changes to welfare reform, very much many of those will be for England and Wales, frankly, because welfare has devolved to Scotland, and most of the people, by the time it's implemented, most of the people who would have been on PIP will be on the Scottish disability payment. So I think we need to just, if I could helpfully say that it's welfare reform, we all like the idea. We say, yes, you should reform welfare and get it right so it supports the right people at work and all that. But when it comes to the detail, it's often a different animal, and it depends what you're trying to do. But I don't think that, in terms of our communities, is the point. The point is that we need to change our position in terms of getting ready for the future and supporting our people to be ready for the future. What does work look like? If we can't do a full-time job, or that's not the kind of jobs that are going to be available, how do we get our workforce to the right place? And PIP, by its nature, as personal independence payment, is to help people go back to work. So I'm always twitchy about tinkering with these things, but luckily it's not in our gift. As an alliance, these things help our people get back to work, and I think that's where we would like to see it best placed. As a Labour councillor, I have a different answer.
Thank you very much. So if we move on from benefits to opportunity, if you like, and the UK Shared Prosperity Fund, how has the shift in funding cycles affected local authorities' ability to deliver growth? Hugely.
You can go first.
I think is a short answer. Previously, Bill, you had a 7-year programme with the potential to extend beyond that. You were able to do some substantial planning, and I think, I'm sorry, I can't remember if it was Altany or Pauline mentioned previously about this never-ending cycle for local authorities of applying, and it just seems to be, as soon as you've put in an application for one thing, you're then on to the next, and it's not helpful from that. Really, we feel that a longer term strategic programme, at least matching the previous 7 years, would be far more helpful and allow us to make significant impacts for future planning.
In terms of the Shared Prosperity Fund, the lack of the European funding replacement, as it was touted, it certainly didn't replace the 7-year multi-annual financial framework that we were used to, which was rather unhelpful. And then when we did get the profile of the Shared Prosperity funding money, it started off lowish, got a bit bigger, and then got quite a lot larger, and then fell off the end of the world, which means the Grand Old Duke of York, we've marched up to the top of the hill, we've got a whole load of people qualified to deliver employability, supporting people, and then the money was going to fall off. Now, the government did come along and support, in the last budget, a cut of about 40% to keep it going, but we need actually a plan rather than sticking plasters at the time to stop it all falling over. I don't think that's acceptable. As an alliance, obviously, we've worked very closely with the Treasury to deliver a non-competitive allocations policy. That's what we've said. Put the money directly to where we need to go, rather than making us do a beauty contest for different projects and begging for funding. So don't do that. Make it allocative. Regional or direct to the local authorities. Cut out the need for it to go through yet another set of hands. The Scottish Government, obviously, with European funding, it was another level of bureaucracy that they had to manage, and nobody really gained from it. So if we can go directly to local authorities, that gives us an opportunity for us to push directly into our communities to get it right. But the Shared Prosperity Fund, thank you very much for the money. It was all very welcome. But 1, it wasn't enough. 2, it wasn't long enough. And 3, it fell off a cliff edge. So we really need to make sure we have a plan for that going forward. And hopefully the post-European funding reviewing in the CSR gives us an opportunity to get that right. Get it on a long-term footing rather than this hand-to-mouth, because we can't keep doing that.
I'm sorry. I was just going to say, and as a third sector organisation, we find it very difficult because of the problems that the local authorities face with their timescales, for us to even get in the door and say, can we work on a project for that funding? It's like, sorry, but so we've got our stumbling blocks with that as for a third sector organisation as well.
Just as an addition to that, you mentioned the regional funding and the access to it. Are the criteria for accessing it clear, and is there any disadvantage to being in one location as opposed to another? I mean, clearly it sounds as if there's disadvantage being in one sector compared to another, and that the third sector doesn't necessarily get access to it in that timescale. But I'm interested whether regional variations in access are present.
I would imagine they are, given that the coalfields don't fit into local authority boundaries. They cut right across the middle, so some of them will be in different regional economic partnerships, whether we're calling them city region deals or growth deals or whatever. So yes, there is a bit of that marginality. Whenever you're between two things, how do you get the right thing? That's why I think it's important that we don't try and put it through too many hands. We try to get it as close to the people who need it as quickly as possible. So local authorities are usually best placed to deliver that, but they need to have forward sight of what's coming so we can plan better. So UK Shared Prosperity Fund, I said it was one of many. I had them written, some of them written down. Levelling Up Fund, Town Centre Fund, all this sort of stuff. It was very cluttered. And it needs to be amalgamated, it needs to be tidied up and consolidated. But being old and wise after the event, as long as it doesn't mean there comes a cut once we put it all together and just take it. We don't want a haircut, we want the same amount of money, but we want it to the right places for us to invest in our communities.
So I'm really pleased to hear that, because I have been a councillor in Eastern Bartonshire, and that cuts out my coalfield, well, almost cuts out my connection to the Coalfields Regeneration Trust. But clearly felt that this was seen as a wealthy area and therefore didn't have the same access, even though the pockets are just as needy. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Kirstine Sullivan.
We're now going to turn to city and regional growth deals. So if I could ask all of you how effective you think these are in delivering benefits to the areas that are most in need.
I'll leave this to
right, okay. Sorry, I'm conscious that my propensity to just go for it and you'll get the lot. So just stop me whenever you're ready. Do they work? Yes. Do they work perfectly? No. Are we on the second and third generations of them? Of course we are. Getting the money, obviously we're coming from an industrial communities event, whereas the Fife sits at the nexus of two city region deals. We're part of Tayside and Tay Cities one, and we're part of Edinburgh Lothians, Borders and Fife one. So they sort of, they're complementary, they do different geographies, but essentially both of them are very different. And I think that's the learning curve we've been on as local authorities. Now, I suppose, Kirstine, having been on the same city regions I have, it's about how do we make sure that the skills agenda, for example, IRS goes right across the region, so that way it will pick up our former coalfield communities in the same way. but I think it's an imperfect tool for that, because it's trying to do much more than we're talking about as industrial communities. We are certainly focused on places like the Fife Coalfields or Lanarkshire or Ayrshire and Midlothian, the Coalfields element of it in those communities. But actually it's wider than that. It is really about many of our communities are feeling the same things without the same historical background. So city region deals, yes, they're good, they work, they bring in extra investment, and they've been seen to be quite good at delivering some things. I just think we need to be careful that's not the only tool that we've got for doing this, because obviously Shared Prospective Fund, no one left behind, and delivering skills to those furthest from the labour market is really important.
So just picking up on the point you made about ensuring skills agenda is across the region, do you think that there's a danger, perhaps with the city deals, that a lot of the money can be swallowed up by the large cities rather than spread across the geographical area?
As someone who signed it as well, and looked like I was eating the back of the First Minister's head while I was doing so, I think we were concerned about that, because Edinburgh is a big magnet of the economy in our region. However, that hasn't turned out to be the case, because we've worked very well collaboratively, the local authorities involved, with that in mind, knowing that this could get us unintended consequences. So we've worked with obviously a number of universities, whether it's Edinburgh, Heriot-Watt, St Andrews, and the colleges that go in Napier, and the colleges around those, is to make sure that the skills were being pushed out and spread to give an opportunity to bring the bodies in to deliver the work that's needed. But we were cognizant of that at the start, and I think we've all worked very closely to make sure it doesn't happen. I know Norman Hampshire was outside earlier, he'll be talking about infrastructure first, but very much making sure that each of our local authorities feel connected and get a share of this, the right share for the right place, based on need.
Yeah, just if
Sorry,
I could, no, not at all. If I could come in there, yeah, thank you. I think, for our city region deal, there's 6 local authorities, and it is very much a case of the chair is shared. As you'll know this, the chair is shared, and each local authority takes a turn, and it's. So we, Midlothian, is the smallest local authority in that 6 local authorities. We have just as much of a voice as Edinburgh, or Fife for that matter, which is also a huge local authority. So I feel that perhaps that could be other areas. I could understand them looking at that and thinking, I don't know if that's really for us. But for me as a Midlothian councillor, I don't feel that has been the case, and I think the benefits that it's brought, the science zone and so on, I think has been very beneficial for Midlothian.
So if I could just move on to ask what you think the potential benefits and drawbacks of the Scottish Government playing a greater role in delivering local growth funding are, and I think we've touched upon the red tape, but I just wondered if you could elaborate more on your views.
Yeah, I mean it's an extra layer, isn't it? And that's always the worry, that's going. You're then talking about timescales and how that's going to impact, because again, as I mentioned previously, the issues in local authority staff being under pressure and having to apply, this constant battle for making applications, and I'm sure Pauline can go into more detail about her life basically, which is just going from one funding paper to another. So that's just going to put on another layer of bureaucracy and time that perhaps would not be helpful.
Do you think there should be more direct funding from UK government, if it's UK government funding, to local authority areas?
Yes.
I think we're agreed on that.
Yeah.
Specifically, but I think we need to be careful as well, because when we were talking about European funding, it was the bureaucracy element of it going through the government before it came to us that was the problem. In terms of the city region deals, it's a tripartite agreement. It's Scottish Government, UK Government and the local authorities. So we're all partners in this job for city regions to make it work. So I don't want anybody to think that is it's not an effective or functional arrangement. Sorry, it's a different hat I now have on. I realised that was a City Region hat I had on. In terms of if we're getting direct funding, absolutely. It would be better the closer it gets to us without going through a number of hands is better. Of course it is. It's more effective. But it comes with responsibility to make sure we're accountable for it and it's used for the things that we're supposed to get it for. I suppose I could touch on one final thing that goes with that, is the power of general competence, which is being consulted on at the moment. If local authorities had that in Scotland, we could do a lot more. There you go. That's a different hat.
Thank you. Pauline, do you want to have
I mean, as the Coalfields Regeneration Trust, we are funded through the Scottish Government, through the Regeneration Fund budget, and it's very difficult because we are year on year. So come August, we've got to start writing the proposal for the next financial year. So it's what we need to be looking at is how can we ensure that there's longer term funding for third sector organisations like ourselves. We are a regeneration organisation. We're unique in the work that we do to support our communities right across Scotland, England and Wales, and we really need to be embedded as that regeneration organisation because we work directly with the communities and we speak to the communities, we see what their priorities are, and then that's when we start working with our partners within our local authorities to say, this has been identified, where can you support it, where can we get the funding to be able to deliver projects together and work together, because of course every penny counts. We want £1 to turn into £10, we want £1,000 to turn into £100,000. So for us it's that longer term and getting embedded into the Scottish Government as well as the UK Government.
Thank you.
I wondered whether or how the industrial strategy could be best used to address the needs of local industrial communities and to help to foster a more resilient and sustainable growth.
Want me to go first? Yes, I suppose the focus of the industrial strategy has to be away from trying to pick winners and trying to predict the future and trying to be too prescriptive about where you think growth is going to come from. If we're talking about the industrial strategy, it needs to focus more on our towns and industrial communities areas have a lot of manufacturing in them, more than the national average. We should focus on our manufacturing. We should create the skills to support that. I had a number of notes for that very thought. I must have been prescient for a minute. We need to use state aid or subsidy control to support investment into the right places, which I've touched on earlier. Supporting research and development, incentivisation, whether it's by tax levers for companies to invest in research and development. Obviously, if we have the right places with the right industrial premises for businesses to be into, we should be able to support them with other options on that. There are new sectors that didn't exist before. Obviously, things like renewable energy is now de rigueur, but we've got the green retrofit to consider. How do we make our homes warm and insulated properly? There's a lot of work that's going to come with that. So the industrial strategy's got a lot of heavy lifting to do for the whole country, but from our point of view, in terms of making sure that back to my assisted area map, I think if we use different data, we'll get different areas that will need assistance. If we know where they are, we can start to direct the work into that. We can't have a very hands-off, light touch, laissez-faire approach to the economy, or what you will get is an overheated economy, and the communities that are furthest from being prosperous will get even further away from that. The investment into towns and our communities is the right thing to do to rebalance the economy, but it also needs to be the right kind of jobs.
My follow-up to that question I'd asked, you've partly answered, but maybe if we could just dig into it a little bit more. So what would the industrial strategy need to contain to ensure that communities that are either not close to big cities or don't have good connectivity with big cities don't find themselves in the same position all over again?
I think if we look at the the footprints of our towns and our communities. There's a lot of deindustrial land round about, and there's a lot of brownfield sites round about. These need to be worked on. Gap funding is a big part of how do we take the market failure that won't invest in them, how do we fund it through the public purse, because the benefit is to our communities and to ourselves. It's a virtuous circle. If we invest into and make these sites available and remediated perhaps, or we use the vacant and developed land fund to do this kind of stuff, but it's about, we have lots of pockets of what would be economically not viable without some support. But the benefit to our communities would be huge if these were brought back into productive use. So I suppose there's part of that. Gap funding, patient capital, we talk about that all the time, without this need for it must turn over quickly. We need to measure differently if we want to get the benefits, and we need to think wider as a government and as local authorities about what does, well, the Treasury Green Book, is that the right tool for some of these measurements? And the answer is probably no. It needs to look at the wider societal benefits, or it needs to quantify them better. So it allows government through industrial policy to say we can help you in these places better. I think that would be my follow-up to that.
Yeah, community wealth building. Yeah. The micro businesses that I've spoken about before. Because, as I said, nice as it would be to think, oh, well, someone's going to open a factory tomorrow and provide 2,000 jobs. That's not going to happen in our areas. And are those jobs going to be available? I think it's maybe the future proofing, which is almost, and I know there will be jobs that will exist in 10 years' time that we don't even know are going to exist today, and that's really difficult. But future it's easy for everybody to say, future-proofing these future jobs as best as can possibly be.
Okay. Susan Murray.
Thank you. So how can the Industrial Strategy Council effectively gather local input to ensure there's a successful outcome all over Scotland?
Talking, and using, again, I keep banging on about partnership working, and I just think that's so important, that getting the local knowledge from people who know their communities best.
I think the Industrial Council, I think that's a good thing. It's an opportunity to harness people's thinking from lots of different places. The chair is former Microsoft, or maybe even still is Microsoft, which is fine, but that's very big. And I think if you're trying to find the best leader, and they will have one view of the world, they'll need to be able to harness people like the Federation of Small Businesses, the CRT, local authorities, and everyone with their feet on the ground to find out what is it that's going to fit best. Because chances of great big factories or great big industries coming, there will be some big wins, and it will be lauded, but actually who gets the growth from that? We need to be able to make sure that our communities have got better jobs closer to home. I say that thousands of times a day, but that's what we need to make sure is there. So they need a wider stakeholder group to listen to, and it needs to feed in. It's easy to say you're listening, but it's very difficult to distill what you're hearing so that everyone still feels included. So it's a very useful thing to have, and it will be very important to get the industrial strategy right, but they need to hear all the voices.
So can I just ask if you would consider then that local community groups, smaller charities in local areas, whether or not the care sector would be considered as an industry in terms of feeding into this, and also the importance, you've talked about micro businesses, but SMEs feeding into this, and whether or not the government's recent changes to the cost of employing people is being fed in adequately to things like that, so that we can absolutely get the full impact, but also to engage the opportunities that might appear, because I think it's always recognised that local people know what local areas need, and therefore whether it's a local entrepreneur or whether it's a local community group that wants to deliver things, and when they are successful, they can actually employ significant numbers of people in this context.
And I think that's, I mean, one of the things that, or it's the biggest part of the work that we do in our communities. You know, we help communities to create local place plans and local action plans, and from that we can identify, you know, and the majority does come down to the, you know, the low skills. It comes down to the employment, and their, you know, their green spaces and their health and well-being and everything. So and we've got so many good community activists within the areas that we work in, that, and they do feel that sometimes that they are overlooked. They're expected, you know, it just becomes an expectation that they're delivering those services, because unfortunately, you know, the councils aren't able to, restricted funding and everything. So it really has to come from the communities. They have to have an involvement to see that they're actually being fully recognised, and they've got a lot to say, and they need to be able to say it.
Yeah, I suppose if consultation was easy, we wouldn't struggle with it quite so much, and as a local authority we do. The care sector is a big part, obviously, in terms of we have an older population. That's going to be a big part of jobs. How do we make those attractive to the right people who want to work in care? It's better that people want to work in it and have that attitude to that kind of work. It doesn't suit everyone, obviously. In terms of feeding in through SMEs and micro business, most of the Fife economy, that can be parochial, is small medium enterprises or micro businesses with one or two great big players. So you've got a great big ballast, and then it's all small. So I think you've got to kind of hear the right voices in terms of how do we feed into the industrial strategy, which is where we started, I think. But you have to also be able to make your communities work. And if care isn't funded properly or isn't managed properly or doesn't work properly, then the detriment to all our communities is the same. You can't get care when we're all getting older, and we're going to need that. Now that my hair's grey, I'm probably more concerned about that. When you mentioned about the cost of employment, I think we're talking about employers' national insurance. I feel a bit two-faced here, so I'll declare that now. As a local authority, we were really thankful that the money was raised so that we have it, and then on the other side, it was a big burden for us to deal with. I think if you're going to tax, I won't. The ICA doesn't have a view as far as I'm aware on this, so I'll speak personally. If you're going to tax, you need to spend that money properly. That's about, you know, if you've got tax and spend, tax and invest. If it's invested in our communities to make them better able for the jobs that we want them to have, we'll live with that for just now. But it's very difficult to raise money. It has to come from somewhere, but you have to make the best of it when you get it. So that's, I think the devolved assemblies both moaned on one hand and said thank you very much for the money. So we got some too.
Commentary from Eileen's chair. Just
a quick one, and it's just about the Industrial Strategy Council. I don't know whether the third sector sit on that, and if they don't, they normally have the voices of the local communities. So is that something that should be happening?
I think there's two levels of that. I think local authorities, whether it's COSLA, whether it's local authorities individually, should have an input to the Industrial Council, but also the third sector is a very loud voice in how we do the things that matter in our communities. So yes, they need to have a voice into it, but I think there's many steps in between to make sure we're gathering it. The problem with all of us is that we get quite parochial when we get into this, which is not very helpful when you're trying to get a strategy for the whole country. But we are, yes, the third sector is huge in terms of delivery. Sorry, Pauline, I answered your question there probably.
No, I was just going to say, I think when you're such a small local authority as Midlothian, it's perhaps a bit easier. So I have regular meetings with the third sector. In fact, I nipped in on my way past yesterday just going past the office. Went in and had a wee shout. And also had a meeting with the Chief Executive of the Chamber of Commerce yesterday as well. Again, because we're so small, we have those personal relationships are well built up. In larger areas, that's maybe a bit more difficult to do.
And I'm not suggesting that we look at local authority reorganisation or anything like that, but I do feel that there's an advantage to being small but mighty.
Well, that concludes our questions to this panel. So I'd just like to end by thanking you all for coming along today and for giving us all your thoughts and ideas. It's been extremely helpful. This is the first session in this particular inquiry, so it's been a good way of setting the scene for what will come afterwards. So thank you very much again.
Thank you,
and I'll say order, and we'll go into private session for a few minutes to allow a changeover. To resume with our second panel looking at our industrial strategy, and I'd like to welcome all three witnesses to the session this morning. If I could just ask you to introduce yourselves. I'll maybe start with the people who are actually in the room. So Mr. Beaton, if you'd like to start.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and good morning everyone. My name's Corey Beaton and I'm from Inverclyde Chamber of Commerce. We represent members of the business community in Inverclyde, all of varying shapes and sizes, from startups and SMEs all the way through to larger employers and the third sector as well. And we're grateful for the opportunity to be here today to share their input. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good morning, I'm Councillor Norman Hampshire. I'm the current council leader in East Lothian. I'm also Vice Chair of the Edinburgh City Deal, and we'll move into the chair next year. I've been on the council for a long number of years, both as a planning convener, but now the council leader.
Thank you. And Councillor McCabe?
Good morning everyone, Councillor Stephen McCabe. I'm the leader of Inverclyde Council. I've held that post for most of the last 18 years, so I've got the scars to show it.
I'm sure. Thank you all very much. So I'll kick off the questions this morning by asking you each to describe the challenges facing your communities as former industrial regions. So I'll start with Councillor Hampshire.
Okay, our challenge in East Lothian, we are on the edge of Edinburgh, and because Edinburgh is the driving force of the Scottish economy, it's actually causing growth within East Lothian. We've had to accommodate a lot of new homes across East Lothian. Every community has taken a significant number of new houses within them, which has meant that the infrastructure within these communities has had to be expanded with 5 new primary schools, a new secondary school, and all of them are at capacity. So we are now under real pressure because there's still more demand for more houses and the infrastructure just can't cope. And the funds that we have available, we can't afford to take development further. On the economic side, we have a huge expansion of renewable energy taking place within East Lothian, whether it be on shore. 2004 was the first wind farm by Crystal Rig, which is Fred Olsen Group, but we've had a number of wind farms developed since then, and now we've got the offshore coming, which is Berwick Bank, which is one of the biggest, it's going to be the biggest wind farm in the world, but all the infrastructure for that needs to come on shore within East Lothian. That means it takes up land within our countryside, and there's a real pressure from the community about the process you have to go through to allow development to take place for this renewable technology. It's different from the planning for housing, whereas the community feel it's been imposed on them rather than through a planning process. So these are the areas. Our infrastructure is probably our biggest challenge as a council. All of the national infrastructure, whether it be the trunk road, the A1 runs right through East Lothian, and the East Coast Main Line, these are under real pressure and investments required to bring them up to meet with the growing demand. We've also, services like health has not been increased to the extent to meet the demand of new people moving into the area. So people who've lived there for a long time are now feeling they're having to take cuts in their services because new people moving in.
Councillor McCabe? Same question.
Thanks, Chair. I suppose there's a contrast probably between Norman's council area and my own. It's not just a matter of we're on different sides of the country, but there's probably a stark contrast. East Lothian is a growing area. Inverclyde's the mainland authority in Scotland with the highest rate of population decline, and we've had population decline for many decades. And part of that was net migration, outward migration, linked very much to deindustrialisation. More recently, it's really a continuing natural decline in our population. Our position with regard to net migration is that we're broadly stable in terms of that. We've very much got an ageing population against above the national average, which means we'll get fewer younger people as well. We've got high levels of economic inactivity. Around 31% of our population is economically inactive, and much of that is to do with the health challenges we were discussing earlier. And we've got high levels of poverty and deprivation. And the reality is, to address those challenges, we need jobs. We need new quality, good quality jobs. And we have faced decades of industrial transition, which the Chamber had certainly highlighted in its submission, where we faced the decline of our shipbuilding and heavy engineering base, where we used to have tens of thousands employed in shipbuilding, heavy engineering. We had a very strong manufacturing base in the 70s and 80s as well, which went through a period of decline. And we had the growth in electronics, which to a certain extent offset the decline in manufacturing and engineering shipbuilding jobs. And then we had the decline of the electronic sector, with jobs going to the Far East and Eastern Europe. To mitigate that, in the late 1980s into the 90s, the then UK government awarded us enterprise zone status, and through the incentives that came from that, we were able, with the support of the governments, I have to say, and its agencies, we were able to attract quite a number of new employers into the area. Companies like the Royal Bank of Scotland opened a mortgage centre. Amazon, which was obviously mentioned in the earlier panel as well, opened a fulfilment centre. We had various call centres established in the mobile phone industry and health as well. Unfortunately, in recent years, we've actually seen those service jobs start to leave the area. In fact, over the last 2 to 3 years, we've faced the loss of around 1,200 jobs. We saw the EEBT call centre in Greenock relocated to Glasgow to fill up empty office spaces as a result of COVID. We've seen Amazon move their fulfilment centre out of Gourock, and in fact the business moved to Fife, and obviously heard earlier about the challenges around Amazon and Fife as well. IBM's final presence in Inverclyde has moved again to empty office space in Glasgow. So we've seen a hemorrhage of jobs over the last 2 to 3 years. And unfortunately, we haven't had any direct support from either government to really address those issues. And we do look with envy, I have to say, at the response there has been to the loss of jobs at Grangemouth, where the significant investment offered by both governments is certainly trying to help the situation. There's a lot of positive things happening in Inverclyde. We do have 3 city deal projects, which are certainly going to be beneficial to the local community as well. We are working with through the Glasgow City region in partnership with them. And recently, the Glasgow City region has recognised that Inverclyde is a priority within the city region. We are not benefiting to the same extent of some of the regional activities as we should have. So they have recognised that we are a priority. And recently we were awarded around £11 million in funding to create new industrial and commercial space in the area. But Inverclyde is certainly an area that needs the support of government. It needs support of the UK government. It needs the support of the Scottish government. The market is reluctant to invest in Inverclyde. We find, and even in our city deal projects, I don't think any of them would have got off the ground without public investment. So we very much are an area that needs the support of government to address the issues that we have and to exploit the opportunities we have. We have excellent opportunities. We're on the River Clyde. We have a good port facilities, good marine facilities. We have opportunities in the green technologies that potentially could be developed as well. But we very much need the support of government to help us address those challenges and exploit those opportunities.
We'll no doubt come to some of those issues as we continue with our questioning. Mr. Beaton, would you want to add anything to that?
I think I very much agree with Stephen's analysis of the situation, particularly over the past 40 years and the transitions that we've experienced as a community. But I think it's fair to say that although we will touch on the opportunities, I think the infrastructure that now remains in Inverclyde presents a significant opportunity for investment into that to then align it more closely with wider UK government economic strategy, and equally so with the Scottish government. In Scotland, and with the focus on clean energy, there are opportunities to provide either manufacturing facilities or storage facilities, as there have been plans for that already in Inverclyde. Equally, looking more widely with defence, Ferguson's, we know that a local shipbuilder is doing some work for BAE, so they already have a stake within that ongoing work in terms of the yards in Govan. But if there were opportunities to expand with the Inch Green facility that we have, and equally other areas of land within Inverclyde that could provide vital manufacturing opportunities, I think they ought to be considered, not least because it would, number one, counter the effect of depopulation and divestment in Inverclyde that's followed from not only these significant economic milestones, but also from the pandemic and the cost of living crisis as well, and particularly Brexit. And I know many of our members are still struggling with the effects of Brexit in the intervening 9 years since the referendum, and time will tell what this new deal with the EU will bring for them. But equally, I think the biggest factor that we have to consider is the time that it's taken since those industries have left Inverclyde, and the time that it's taken now for the government to begin to step up through the Shared Prosperity Fund and Levelling Up Fund to invest in Inverclyde, to promote it as a great place to live and work, as I continue to do both. So yeah, there are very much many opportunities ahead that we will come on to, as you said, Chair, but it's balancing them, I think, with the work that's needed to undo the damage that's been done over the past 40 years in particular.
Thank you. And Douglas McAllister.
My questions to both Councillor McCabe and to Mr Beaton. And Councillor McCabe, you mentioned in your first answer that one of the greatest challenges is economic inactivity. So the obvious challenge is employment, with low employment rates and high unemployment figures. Both are above the national average in Inverclyde, as I understand it. So my question to both of you is, what initiatives in Inverclyde are tackling high unemployment and economic activity, and what are your priorities over the next 5 years to improve employment rates?
think I'll let Stephen go first for that one.
Yeah, we've got a range of programmes in Inverclyde to try and address that. We've got a very well educated population in Inverclyde. Our schools very much punch above their weight when we compare to other areas. So we've got a lot of young people who come out of our schools well educated. We've got a high proportion of our young people going to college and university as well. But there is a significant proportion of the population who are what they call furthest from the labour market, and it is about trying to support those people, young people and older people, as was discussed in the earlier panel session, to try and support them into employment, get them the skills that they need. So we've got a range of programmes, modern apprenticeship programmes, wage subsidy programmes for employers. We work very closely with the third and voluntary sector, who provide a range of opportunities for people who are furthest from the labour market. We seek to try and address issues around mental health and addictions as well. Obviously, we've got a lot of young people with additional support needs, and we need to work intensively with them to try and give them the skills that they need. So it's something we work very hard at, but there's no doubt there's an ongoing challenge that we need to continue to address, and the more support I suppose we can get from the governments and agencies, and the more funding we can get, certainly would assist us in trying to address those issues. We've obviously got specific issues around new Scots coming into our community, and there's a lot of support goes into helping them with language skills as well. The Shared Prosperity Fund was obviously mentioned earlier on, and the Multiply programme has been used to try and help people benefit and improve their skills in maths as well. So there's a range of work that we are doing to try and support people who are furthest from the labour market. And I know earlier on we're discussing the issue of welfare reform and the focus on people with disabilities, and I think it's critical that we support people with disabilities to maximise their opportunities, and that support it has to be very intense in a lot of cases, and it will be very costly as well if we're genuinely going to give them the opportunity to fulfil their potential. So I'm under no illusion about that, but I think there's a lot of good work happening in Inverclyde across the agencies, and it certainly will continue to be a big focus for us in the years ahead.
Yes, I think in relation to what Stephen said about the work that the public sector is doing, they certainly are making an impact. And I think when you look at the levels of deprivation and social inequality within Inverclyde and the impact that has on local individuals' abilities to then engage in education, there have been council services that have been able to support adult learners as well, improving their literacy skills. And equally, there have been adult learners who have then went on to gain a minimum of an SCQF qualification, and particularly through our partners and certainly a member of the Chamber, the West College Scotland and Greenock. But they are under pressures just as the further education, higher education sectors are anyway, in the drawback of funding that has been available to them. And there have been times where the future survival of the college's presence in Inverclyde has been put into question. And we're equally keen to support as many adult learners into further education and ideally as well higher education to benefit from the skills and the development that they gain from that. And also as well to touch on the work that the third sector is doing. For example, our third sector interface, CVS Inverclyde, they promote opportunities for volunteering not only among local volunteers but also local organisations that would benefit from having volunteers brought in. When you look at the situation for a charity with the intermittent funding cycles and the constant struggle to secure them, it's difficult enough for them to look at recruiting staff beyond perhaps a 1 or 2 or 3 year period. But bringing in volunteers to not only support the clients that they support, deliver the work that they do, bring in their inherent skills and lived experiences, but equally for those that have very little of any of them, it gives them the opportunity to improve their employability and their attractiveness, I suppose, to employers, at least on paper, and then what they then bring to an interview and then into a job. And we as a Chamber are very keen to support any opportunity that delivers on that, particularly through CVS and also the community development trust and the impact that they have in our community. So yeah, I think there's a very good blend to sum up in the impact that the public sector and the third sector have, and equally with the private sector. I think a lot of those initiatives kind of go unsung and unrecognised, and offering work experience to those who are already in school, to school leavers, to those on placement in college and university, for them then to develop those skills and then take them into employment. So there is very much a good deal of partnership working in Inverclyde to at least try to address those challenges, but we're a long way away from overcoming them. Again, not to labour too much on the welfare reform point, but if there are opportunities coming forward for employability services that are run by the DWP to be better funded, or at least funded to a greater degree, to pilot more and more innovative and unique initiatives in areas like Inverclyde where there is a real high need for it, at least a test case as a viability study to discover the impact and what results then are yielded, then I think that's something that ought to be encouraged.
I think you mentioned previously is on behalf of the Inverclyde Chamber of Commerce that you felt you were getting limited support in Inverclyde from government, and I presume you meant both UK and Scottish government. What should both governments be doing differently to better support the community of Inverclyde? But I'll throw it back at you. Can I ask both of you, what are you doing to capitalise, for instance, in the growth sectors and announcements coming from the UK government in initiatives such as defence and clean energy? These are employment opportunities.
Who wants to go first on that one, Karen?
I think it was originally.
I'm happy to go first.
Is that to myself?
Yes, first.
Yeah. I think to your point on what support we feel could be better, I think developed by the Scottish Government, the UK Government, I think recognition, first of all, of the fact that there is an inherently unique situation in Inverclyde in relation to the levels of deprivation and unemployment that we have and depopulation. We are the most deprived area in Scotland, according to a study that was done in 2020. But if you factor in the pandemic and the cost of living crisis that followed, I think you would see those numbers, that either that rate of deprivation increase or that we would nonetheless stay in that position. And I think recognition of that, first of all, from I think the Scottish Government, in seeking to address those matters directly with greater involvement in not only the public sector in relation to publicly funded initiatives and the third sector as well, and the availability of funding, but equally within the private sector to encourage growth and to encourage not only the creation of businesses but the creation then of jobs that then follow, and the support that ought to be given to bring those that are either unemployed or they're job seekers for the first time into employment. I think the funding that has been brought from the UK Government previously, from the Shared Prosperity Fund and Levelling Up Fund, have delivered, I think, quite remarkable levels of change and projected change in Inverclyde in terms of the regeneration of the area, what that then means for those within the supply chain locally and indeed regionally, to count on the regional support that we've had through the City Region deal. These are all great opportunities that have been lined up, but we're still yet to feel the benefit of it. So I think with the benefit of time, we would know the impact that would have on our local community and for those that are seeking employment. And whether that then counteracts the issues that we have with deprivation, socio and economic, and whether that would encourage not only those who want to work and live in Inverclyde to remain in Inverclyde, and if their job then has to move elsewhere in time, we can only predict. They want to then still live in Inverclyde. But equally, if we flip on its head, there is a unique selling point in Inverclyde for homeowners and first-time buyers. There is one also for businesses, and that is the fact that we have our burgeoning infrastructure, a workforce that's ready to work and get back into work, and the prime location that we offer for transport links in our infrastructure. I think, as much as Stephen and I will know that many of our constituents talk about the issues with ongoing roadworks, that is a long-term investment that will yield results and improve their access to other opportunities as much as they will for people coming into the community.
Thank you. Okay.
Yeah, we're very much knocking on the door of government and to try to make the case for investment in Inverclyde, and ably supported, I have to say, by our new MP Martin McCluskey, who's been a great champion for the area since he became the MP. We've had engagement with both the Scottish and the UK governments. We've had ministers visiting us. We established a task force which has ministerial representation on it as well. And we do believe we've got a lot to offer in Inverclyde, and absolutely in terms of the green energy, the green technologies, we're an excellent location on the west coast. We've got excellent port facilities. We've got excellent transport links as well. We've got close proximity, obviously, to Glasgow Airport. In terms of defence jobs, absolutely, we are 20 miles down the road from the biggest warship facilities in the UK. We've got our own small shipyard that could play a part in that. We've got a massive dry dock in Greenock which could play a part in that as well. So we're very much open for business and having engagement. But the reality is, I've said previously, we do need the support of government. In terms of our city deal projects, we required that investment to bring those projects to fruition. And we've seen the success, for example, of our cruise terminal, a £20 million investment, half of it coming from the public sector, which is hopefully over the next decade going to lead to a dramatic increase in passengers coming through the Port of Greenock, and real economic benefits coming to both the local community and the wider region as well. So we're very ambitious for Inverclyde. We really see that there are opportunities here, but there is undoubtedly the case and that's why I suppose we're discussing areas like the Coalfields, areas like Inverclyde today, as areas like ours need the support of government. Government intervention is required, and even in the context of the Glasgow City region, we've probably not secured as many benefits from the Glasgow City region in various initiatives because, for example, we don't have a university in Inverclyde, and much of the investment is going through universities as well. So we very much, as I said, need the support, but we've demonstrated we can deliver, both as a local authority and both as part of the Glasgow City region, and all we're asking is for government to recognise that and to work with us. And as part of, I suppose, the wider city region, we're very much speaking to government about a potential devolution deal. We believe that through the city region, through various other initiatives, we've demonstrated as a city region partnership that we can deliver, and through a devolution deal, which gives us more autonomy in decision making over how we invest money for our own regional and local priorities, that we can deliver even more.
Thank you both. Before we move on to Susan Murray, we've got quite a lot still to get through, and we are fast running out of time. So if I could ask questioners and answers to be as succinct and focused as possible. But I'll pass on to Susan Murray. Oh, sorry, Kirsty Sullivan. Sorry.
Thanks, Chair. It's a question for yourself, Norman. So you've already touched on population growth in Edinburgh overspilling into the East Lothian area, and you mentioned how a lot of local residents do feel disadvantaged somewhat from that due to the increasing pressure on services. How are you supporting disadvantaged residents to ensure that everyone can benefit from the region's economic success?
I mean, I've mentioned that there is pressure on certain services, but every community has benefited from growth. Growth is something that's a positive thing. It has brought additional investment into each of the communities. Walliford was our probably most deprived area within East Lothian. That community is now doubled in size with the housing that we are delivering there. It's got a brand new primary school, a brand new secondary school, and it's the secondary school that's been built in Walliford is a sort of secondary campus that has a training facility attached to it. So young people who are not academically doing well have an opportunity within that school to learn trades of joinery, bricklaying, electrical. So and children from other areas within East Lothian go to this facility as well. So, you know, growth has allowed us to deliver these sort of things. Without that growth, they would never have happened. In Walliford, old primary school was really, really poor. This secondary school is state of the art. So this what was a really deprived area now has completely changed. And we've done that in every community. People who are struggling, we've got a project that's, I know the chair said to be quick here, but in my own community, the Ridge project, it takes on young people from across the area that were struggling within education to learn traditional skills, and they're doing restoration of buildings. It is a proper training programme. The best youngsters there go into apprenticeships, and there's lots of companies now interested in working with them to try and get the best people to come into their business to move forward.
Thanks very much for that. But can I also ask how significant East Lothian's proximity to Edinburgh has been in driving its economic success compared to other measures that might have been introduced by the council?
Well, I mean, obviously the city deal, which I know you're aware of, I know there was a lot of concern at the start. Everybody felt, here's Edinburgh. We had the Lothian Region days where there was dominance from the city. However, the city region is a different model, and it's allowed every authority to still have its major input into the deal. The partnership that's developed, the relationships between officers and from the different authorities and to the universities, to business people, it's been greatly improved, and that's what's driven the city deal forward. It was £600 million of UK and Scottish Government investment. It's generated £1.5 billion of investment into our region. And, you know, there's a lot more now going to come from it through the facilities that we built, a lot of innovation facilities that will drive business move forward. My own area is the Queen Margaret University Food and Innovation Hub, which is about driving food products and drink products in a healthier forum. And hopefully from the Innovation Hub, the business market that's available round about it will become facilities where products will be developed and go into the marketplace. That venture is a partnership between East Lothian Council and Queen Margaret University, and we are really open just end of the summer, and it will be, I think, a driver for a lot of new employment opportunities for the area.
And just to clarify, is that project come from the City Region deal?
It was the City Region deal.
Okay, so if I can just ask for detail on what other measures the council has taken and how they compare to
obviously,
some of the work coming out of the City Region deal.
Yeah. Well, what we've done is we had a coal-fired power station in East Lothian, and obviously that had to close. We, as a council, a small council like East Lothian, took the decision to purchase that site from Scottish Power. It's a big gamble for a small local authority to take something on as complex as an old coal-fired power station. But again, we were lucky to get some levelling up funding, and we've sort of restored most of the site. Still work to be done, but we are going to have the site restored. We've been able to sell off some of the land to offshore wind farms who are putting in infrastructure to connect to the grid. But there's still a lot of land still available on there. We obviously have companies who are looking to utilise some of the power that's going to become from the wind farms for data centres. We also have a facility on site that's a large battery store, and you know, through that area we believe we'll be able to deliver much more growth within East Lothian. Data is, according to Peter Matheson from Edinburgh University, data is going to be the big growth factor going forward, and the more facilities you can have to support data, you will grow your economy. So we are in a really good place, and we've got obviously Torness Nuclear Power Station at the other end. It's got at the moment a licence till 2030. We're hoping to see that extended a bit, but we'd also like to see modular reactors located on that site. But there's also potential, because there's a lot of power coming in at that location because of the Eastern Green Link. We think there's potential for hydrogen production and other manufacturing in that area.
There's a number of initiatives going on within the council,
yeah,
as well as those.
As well as the city deal.
Right.
Yeah.
That's great, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. So moving to opportunities on the east, to opportunities on the west, Mr McCabe, the Clune Park estate demolition, that opportunity for regeneration there. Can you just give us some idea why it's been so difficult to acquire all the properties, and what steps are being taken to overcome those difficulties?
Well, the Clune Park area has been a long saga. I could probably take it up in the next hour, giving you the history of Clune Park. But, I mean, the reality is that I was the councillor from Clune Park from 1992 to 1996, and at that time, the area was showing signs of decline. It was an entirely privately owned estate. It was originally built for shipyard workers, but it was entirely privately owned, managed by a couple of factors. We had started to see private landlords buying into the area as well. And at that time, there was a plan to create a housing action area for improvement that would have seen the properties refurbished, pitched roofs put on them as well. But unfortunately, the amount of funding for private housing was cut dramatically in the mid-1990s by the then Conservative government, and that plan never got off the ground. And into the 2000s, we had dialogue with the Scottish Government about potential funding for a housing action area, and they weren't prepared to put the funding in. Their view was the area should be demolished and a new housing built in its place. So we had to then, over a period of time, seek to acquire the properties. And unfortunately, in terms of our powers, are very limited. So actually, we weren't really able to take effective action until the properties had deteriorated to the point where they were considered to be unsafe. We have, through a process of voluntary sale and engagement, we've now acquired probably around 80% of the estate and commenced the demolition. But it really has been a war of attrition with particularly private landlords who were unwilling to sell their properties voluntarily to us at the price that we could afford. And as a relatively small authority, there wasn't a huge amounts of money available to us. And obviously we're constrained by the public purse in terms of what we can actually pay for properties. We had engaged with the Scottish Government during the 2000s to try and get the new legislation to give us more powers, but unfortunately the government chose not to go down that route. Compulsory purchase is obviously a power available to us, but it's very much a last resort. So we've obviously got to a stage where the estate was in such a bad condition that it got that reputation, and we've seen the videos of it as well. So really, I think there are lessons to be learned for the Scottish Government in terms of powers that should be available to local authorities to deal with situations like this. That could have meant that the renewal of this estate, the demolition of the estate, could have started many years ago rather than taking probably around 20 years to get to the point we're at now.
Do you think that all the costs of acquiring estates like this to regenerate are taken into account? You say that the council can only offer the market rate for each property, but given the length of time this has taken, that must have added significant cost to the council while no action's being taken, or is that not reading the situation correctly? Does it mean that there are no costs and it just takes longer for a project to be delivered?
No, there are extra costs. It's not just to the council, the extra costs to the public purse in terms of the police having to attend on occasion, the fire service having to attend occasion as well. Cost to the council as we've acquired the properties and having to secure the properties and protect them from vandalism and fire raising, etc. So yeah, significant costs. Legal costs for the council in terms of fighting legal challenges, etc. Taking action against owners who are not paying their council tax, etc. So there's been lots and lots of. I mean, we as a council probably incurred somewhere in the region of £3 million worth of cost today in terms of that process. In terms of what we could pay for the properties, we're constrained by value for money, and we have to engage with the district valuer to put an appropriate valuation. Now, there is some flexibility around that, where we're maybe seeking to acquire large numbers of properties, and there's a benefit in acquiring a large number of properties rather than individual properties. Also, lots of issues around ownership, people disappearing, not knowing who properties fall into the Crown as well. So it's been a long process, and really it's taken too long, and that's because the powers available to us have been inadequate.
Thank you. And how long do you anticipate the whole process is going to take in the end?
We had commenced the demolition of the properties recently, those properties where we've got demolition orders on. We're hoping to acquire the remaining properties probably within the next 12 months or so, and hopefully demolish the estate within that period. We then have to secure funding from the Scottish Government to build replacement houses. So we're engaging with housing associations and the Scottish Government to look for funding to build probably around about 150 replacement new build properties for affordable homes. And hopefully, if we can secure that funding, probably maybe take 5 years or so to build the new properties. And we believe that would be an excellent estate for Port Glasgow and Inverclyde more generally. It's in a good location. It's very close to the town centre, close to transport links as well. And there's very much a need for good quality, affordable homes as well in the area.
Thank you very much.
Before I pass to Elaine Stewart, can I just ask Councillor McCabe if he could perhaps adjust his volume a little bit for us? Really believe it or not, when I tell you this, Councillor McCabe, you're very quiet today. So if you could either speak up a wee bit or adjust the volume, that would be very helpful. I'll pass to Elaine Stewart.
Thank you, everybody. So the regeneration projects in your areas addressing the socio-economic challenges in your communities, how do you measure the success and the impact of them?
I mean, it's obviously difficult to know it from each area within East Lothian, but our employment level is now really low within East Lothian. The opportunities for young people if you're young people, or not just young people, people who are inactive in employment, it's really difficult for them to say to them, you need to go into a job. They need a lot of work to get them ready for employment, and that is an area that we've started to move much more into, because employers will tell us that you can just send somebody along to them, but if they're not ready for getting into that working place, they need confidence as well. Once they've been out of work for some time, their confidence is gone, and you need to build up that confidence and then work with them to get them back in. And it's basic things that they need to give them that confidence. And the project I mentioned, the Ridge, do a lot of work with people. Some people who have got sort of been through alcohol or drug problems, the work that they've done with them to try and get them into a place that they can hold down a place of employment. We need to keep on doing more of that, and we're trying to see that across the area. But it's going to be a challenge going forward because of the changes to the welfare system. More and more of these people will need to go back into the workplace, and we'll need to give them as much support as we possibly can so that employers will take them on, and we'll try and monitor that to make sure we're doing everything we can to accommodate them.
Yeah, I think, as Norman touched on, you have the usual metrics in terms of how high or low your unemployment rate goes, over a period of time, and the level of investment in terms of the overall value of it that's going into a community. I think from a business community's perspective, It's in, as Norm said about the confidence of those leaving school to go into the market, it's the confidence of businesses going forward into the next, I wouldn't even say just a year, but the next quarter or so. The Scottish Chambers of Commerce's quarterly economic indicator gives a good indication of that, and it's remained fairly stable, if not dipped over, I think, the past 5 months now since the start of the year. And various factors involved in that, with the risk that tariffs have been imposed by the United States have impacted on businesses in terms of their supply chain, the increased cost of doing businesses associated with inflation, interest rates, and increased national insurance costs. But I think that is a broad general picture about the Scottish economy at large. Looks like, I think, in Inverclyde, we've had a new port operator, Global Port Holdings, move into Inverclyde and secure a 50-year lease. That's a great sign of confidence, I think, in the area and in such a growth area as tourism in Inverclyde. And they're planning on providing further opportunities, not just to local job seekers and those seeking, opportunities following school or university, but equally for the business community as well, to access such a vital and I think profitable market, as you could say it could be, in tourists that then come off the ship. And equally the same with Peel Ports as well, the owners of the port, and providing those opportunities. At the moment, according to Business Gateway, there are 10 businesses starting in Inverclyde each week. Now, the viability and survival rate of them we don't know, but if we can access them, support them, and if we're then able to direct the necessary either logistical support or financial support from the council or elsewhere into those businesses to help them to grow, to help them to employ staff, then I think through that investment and with the benefit of time, we will then see that. But at the moment, the picture for the business community is a bit of I think it's fair to say, a bit of a mixed bag and mixed opinions. But I think time's the biggest test for that.
Councillor McCabe?
Yeah, I mean, it's a range of measures, as Norman mentioned earlier. Obviously, it's about getting people's skills, etc. But for us, it's about jobs. Obviously, it's about getting people into the labour market, and it's about reducing unemployment. And we have made some progress in terms of reducing the number of economically inactive people in the area through very intensive programmes, working with them, family support, for example, as well, providing people with appropriate childcare that assist them to get into the labour market. But unfortunately, our unemployment rate and levels have remained pretty stubborn and stable over the last number of years. And I think part of that is that we're running hard to stand still, and I think it very much is linked to the point I made earlier, that the fact that we've lost around about 1,200 jobs over the last 2 to 3 years from these different companies moving out of the area. So while we're working hard to attract new jobs to bring new jobs, for example, as part of our cruise terminal, we created a new high-end restaurant which has created 70 jobs. But we're working very hard to try and get people into work, try to create jobs, but at the same time we're having a hemorrhage of jobs out of the area.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Kirsty Sullivan.
Can I ask both Norman and Stephen how the reduction in the UK Shared Prosperity Fund for 25-26 will impact on the projects and initiatives that you've currently got planned?
It's like any government funding that's short term. We've put in programmes in place to provide training, and we can't give people any guarantee of what's coming down the road. These are programmes that are really essential. If you're going to reduce or get the maximum number of people into employment opportunities, we need that funding. Without that funding, these programmes will stop, and these people have absolutely no chance of getting back into the workplace. I say to both Scottish Government, who meet with ministers from Scottish Government, that we get funding packages, money for a package for here, package for this, package for that. Just give the council its pot of money and allow the council to deliver the services that our community needs. And we always look at, everybody should be doing the same. what happens in Glasgow or Inverclyde is completely different what happens in East Lothian. So just give the money to the local authority, whatever the share of the pot is, and let us deliver. Give us some things that we should be targeting for, but don't put it into small pots of money. Just give us it, and we can manage that budget much better than we currently are in at the moment.
Thanks, Norman. Stephen?
Very much in the interest of time, I agree with everything that Norman's just said.
Okay, that being the case, I'll move on to my next question. What do you see as being the limitations of local and regional funding initiatives, and how do you think they could be improved? So you have mentioned multi-year funding, because one-year funding doesn't allow you to plan ahead and doesn't allow you to perhaps take a more strategic view. But what other measures do you think would be helpful?
I think thought here. I mean, obviously, we need more funding. I mean, if you're looking for us to deliver growth, growth doesn't get recognised in the settlement figures that come through the process. We are now at a position in East Lothian. We have a potential. It was a open cast coalfield. It's been redeveloped, something like 1,600 houses. But to expand that to a much bigger community, something like 11,000 homes, something like £300 million capital investment required for infrastructure. And there's no way a small council can do that by a Section 75. And I mean, we'll get money from developers, but it needs to be much more strategic thinking about, and that's where the city deal process comes in. That, you know, if funding is coming through a city deal model, and each area is getting its share of that pot, we can deliver things much better. I mean, I said at the beginning, Lothian Region I didn't think worked as well from our area, but I do believe regional working because you can plan things better. I mean, Edinburgh trying to improve the transport within Edinburgh needs to work with its outlying authorities. So there needs to be funding on a sort of regional type basis for regional infrastructure. And one of the things that I think is, I mean, Edinburgh is a huge driving force in the Scottish economy. There's so much going on within that. But Edinburgh knows it can't get much better unless its region grows. And that's where the city deal has shown everybody that's the way to grow it. And I think if we could, you know, link the northeast of England to the southeast of Scotland, I mean, the A1 is a terrible trunk road. If that was dualled, that would be certainly a driving force for growth within that the areas of the northeast and Scotland.
Thank you. Stephen?
Yeah, I think it's very much about trusting local authorities with the funding, rather than having a lot of different pots of money and a lot of bureaucracy that surrounds those. Trust that we know our communities best, we know the priorities for our communities, and give us that sort of that devolution. We see obviously devolution to the Scottish Government, the Scottish Parliament. Let's have some devolution to local authorities within Scotland and give us the flexibility that we need to deliver for our communities. And I think it is important, as Norm has alluded to, our regions are mostly quite big. Glasgow City region's about 40% of Scotland's population, but there are different challenges within the regions, and that's why we're pleased that the City region has recently recognised that Inverclyde is a particular priority within the City region strategy, and hopefully that will bear fruit in terms of our share of investment, both from the City region and from the governments in future. And I mean, the government strategy around growth is very much to be welcomed, and I support the ethos behind it. But pretty small letters within it is the term inclusive growth, and that's the reality. We need inclusive growth. We shouldn't be investing in areas that are already booming. We should be investing in those areas that need the investment, that need the help, that need a hand up, and that is targeting, because the whole country needs to to benefit from growth. And we often talk about trickle-down economics. Well, I'm sorry, we don't need trickle-down growth. We need growth. We need an investment strategy, a growth strategy that's targeted at those areas of the country that needs the greatest investment to address the underlying challenges of poor health, depopulation, worklessness. That's where the government needs to prioritise in terms of its growth strategy.
Thanks, Stephen.
We know there's going to be a white paper specifically aimed at post-industrial areas coming along soon. So a two-part question in a sense. What would your priorities be for that white paper? And do our local authorities have the capacity to deliver those local aspects of that strategy effectively?
I'll go first. I mean, obviously, local authorities are best placed to deliver growth. If local authorities are given the resource, we can make growth happen. We know our areas. We can work with the businesses that won't allocate within our areas. We have the planning system. The planning system needs to be, I think, improved. You know, we need more powers with it. If land is allocated through the planning system, the landowner can sit on that piece of land and not allow anybody to develop on it. If you allocate that land for economic development, we should have the power to acquire that land. We've got businesses desperate to build, expand, and they can't get access to this land. And that needs to change. If you're going to get growth taking place, you need to give local authorities the powers, and we will make growth happen. I can guarantee you that that's the best way of delivering growth across the nation.
And Councillor McCabe.
I mean, I think the government's priorities are very much the right priorities, but I do think they need to target investment at those areas that are in greatest need. And it isn't looking at places like Inverclyde and say, what are Inverclyde's strengths? How can Inverclyde contribute to the national growth strategy, and how do we support that? And in terms of capacity, I mean, it certainly is the case that my authority is a relatively small authority, and unfortunately over the years we've had to cut back our economic regeneration staff just because to protect other services. But a big benefit from the Glasgow City region has been the ability to work in partnership. And as Norman said, probably some of us went into the city region and the city deals with a bit of trepidation. But I think the partnership working has turned out to be excellent. And it's very much allowed us to work together as a team. Certainly our region isn't dominated by Glasgow, but we very much get the benefit of working with Glasgow and bigger authorities as well, as they get benefits from working from us as well. And I think the city region and the 8 authorities within the city region have certainly demonstrated our ability to deliver. The Glasgow City region deal is somewhere in the region of £1 billion programme, and we've demonstrated that we can deliver that level of investment and generate private investment as well. We've demonstrated the other funding streams that we can deliver as well. So I do think there is the capacity, and I think that needs to be recognised by both the UK government and the Scottish government as well, that we should be encouraging local authorities to play a greater role in economic regeneration and growth.
Well, you've certainly got it on the record this morning, so thank you for that. That concludes our questions to you this morning, so thank you all very, very much for giving us evidence. As always with these sessions, it's very, very useful to hear what you have to say, and we look forward to being able to share our report with you eventually once we've concluded our inquiry. So thank you very much again. Order, order.